prominent actors in the Christian mission in my hometown, Abeokuta, and of course further afield in the great evangelizing mission of the Christian church across my western bulge of the African continent, prelude to the even more imperious mission of colonization. As a child, attending St. Peter's School and even warbling as a chorister in St. Peter's Church, I had not the slightest knowledge of the intertwining of the careers of those three figures, Townsend, Hinderer, and Crowther. Christians all, serving the same deity, but evident occupants of different rungs in the hierarchy of godly service, including its politics. As confessed in my childhood biography, however, my fertile imagination never failed to spin fantasies around those images, most persistently that last, Àjàyí Crowther. That was predictable, from the moment I learnt that he actually once occupied the adjoining compound to ours, a two-story colonial structure that, at least, was a concession to his status within the Anglican Church. The other two, Hinderer and Townsend, became fused with the colourful ancestral masquerades against whom, ironically, all three were united in demonizing as products of pagan superstition. We all knew the Àjàyí story, of course, right from elementary school. Kidnapped as a child and sold into slavery, rescued by British warships and deposited on a settlement called Sierra Leone. Eventually restored to his home in present-day Nigeria a quarter of a century later, after life-and-death escapades plus, thankfully, immersion in intellectual waters. That last produced numerous translations in original works such as The History of the Yorubas, a pioneer work on that subject and still a seminal reference work for scholars and students. Biyi Bandele's literary thrust, a mix of the anecdotal, archival, and inquisitional, in this posthumously published work, parts company with the slave narratives to which we are more accustomed. It disorientates yet inducts one at a most primary level of intimacy and even self-identification into the realities of capture, enslavement, and displacement. Eases one deftly into a milieu of the slaving occupation as an existential norm, and one that was near inextricably intertwined with the trajectory of colonialism in West Africa. This was Bandele's last work, and I find it highly commendable that his publishers have opted to leave it exactly as rendered by that vividly reconstructive mind and its creative empathy. Penetrating through to character retrieval from time past in the context of nations in the making, takes history out of dry pursuit and immerses us in the passions, motivations, and even banalities of men and women of power and influence. This joins other works in the endlessly fascinating drama of the imperial adventure in its motley guises, a phase over which one would wish a final curtain has been drawn. Alas, today what we are confronted with is nothing less than its resurgence, albeit under different guises, at the hands of new players and powered by both subtle and crudely violent mechanisms. For us, in this part of the world, there is a grave resonance of a historic replay, near eerie, provoked by several incidentals and perspectives of this narrative. Here is a quick sample that must send shivers down the spines of today's inhabitants of the West African sub-region, from Burkina Faso to the creeks of the Niger Delta. From hamlets on the Atlantic coast and villages and towns in the rainforests and the savannah and cities at the edge of the Sahara Desert, thousands, tens of thousands had been abducted and sold into slavery by marauding squads of Fulani soldiers, mercenaries whose most versatile weapon was stealth and surprise. In the early days, such raids had been carried out in the name of God, but the raiders themselves, most of whom were not yet born in those early days, had long ceased to use the pretext of jihad as justification. They were born into plunder as a way of life, and bred with beggar thy neighbor as the first rule of survival, as were their fathers and their fathers before them. To these men, being a plunderer was a trade no different than being a weaver or a cattle rearer. It was just a lot more rewarding.